All right, here we go. Another lesson notes. And this time we are working with Charles Nelson. He is committed to Duke University 2025 class. And Charles is an incredibly good ball striker, but we have been seeing a consistent miss the past few months. And we're kind of in a lower season here of competitive golf. So now is the time to be working on a little bit of this form stuff. So we'll start with this video on the left. And again, anytime you're making any changes in your form, it really needs to be from the standpoint of I'm seeing this undesirable contact, undesirable ball flight, and I'm really trying to solve it. And so that's kind of where the starting point is. So I've drawn a couple lines. The blue line would be our impact plane, and then I just drew a circle around his head because the two main problems are some heel strikes and then some pull draws. Really not seeing the ball go too far right, and really not seeing any toe contact. So think about, we're in that frame of reference. I'm pulling it and I'm heeling it. So what would be the cause of those two things? So as we take the club up, what I want you to notice is obviously it's coming pretty far inside. You know, that doesn't bother me all that much in general, unless I start to see some things like this. So you can kind of see as he takes the club inside, there's also like a tip of his upper mass kind of moving down. Well, there's the beginning of starting to heel it. So if we couple that with what we'll call a very, very flat hinge plane. So what I mean by that is at the top of the backswing, you can see the shaft is pointing like way over here. So in general, when the shaft is like that, there's just going to have to be some steepening of basically the grip moving down as the club head moves up. And that move is generally what's going to cause the face to shut. And that's the case in Charles' swing here. And, you know, he's done a really good job, I'd say, of managing that. You know, and we do things like, you know, putting a head cover right here to kind of soften that. But, you know, now that we have the time to kind of work on this, we're going to try to tackle that through the backswing to kind of eliminate the likelihood of that strike. So if we were to keep going down, you can see that, you know, the shaft stays pretty flat for a little bit, but then at the last second, this is where you start to see the steepening. And so it's still pretty flat there, but you start to see it steepen and the face gets pretty shut right there to where most likely this is going to be a pull draw. You can still see the head is still slightly tipped forward. Let me redraw that. Slightly tipped forward. So you couple that with kind of the steepening, you know, maybe you see some heel, but mainly going to be the pull. So we're blaming mainly the tip and then the shut face, but the shut face is more a product of how the shaft is reacting to where it is in the swing. And oh, by the way, you know, Charles swings his 6-iron close to 100 miles an hour. And so, yeah, if it's moving that fast, there's going to be a lot of shifting of the shaft. An interesting note, so when we make these changes on the right, the club head speed went from 99 to 102.5 without really that being the intent. Obviously, at 100 miles an hour, that's well above tour average, so it's not like we were trying to hit it further. So let's jump into the after. So you can see here, you know, I have this line here. That's the Tommy Fleetwood drill. I've made plenty of videos about that. So if you're someone who takes the club really far inside, you know, then I would obviously, you know, do something like that. The only concern with doing this stick drill is that if you're trying to hit a draw, it kind of instinctively, you know, is difficult because you feel like maybe you need to take the club inside. That kind of is helpful. So you can see here we have this draw gate set up with, you know, with this line, because as we're working on the club going more in front of him, not as inside, obviously it's going to be harder to hit the draw to a degree. So let me clean that up a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the change. Again, I'm not trying to make him go up this line. This is just kind of what naturally happens. So if we go to the top, you can see he actually grew taller on the backswing. And I would argue that's because as the club head mass isn't working so far inside, he's not having to basically like do a counter movement with his head as the club head mass is more inside. So you can see there's a ton of extra length here in the backswing. That's really, you know, where the extra club head speed came from. So these two positions, this is the top of the backswing here. So you can see a ton of more rib cage rotation. You know, a couple other things that he and I talked about as you start to see some daylight between the knees here. Let me draw this. And then you start to see the height, the growth. And as we see that, you know, those two things are going to eliminate some of the heel strikes. And so immediately when he comes down, you can see here that the way the shaft is moving, it's much more in line with where he's going to be going at impact. If I were to draw that line, you can see that that is much closer to the golf ball. It's still a little flat, but it's a heck of a lot different than like at this same position here. So when we see that it's really, really, I guess I'll use the words off plane. I don't love to use that, but you can kind of get the idea that there's just going to be a lot less shifting in this video on the right just because of where the shaft was at the top of the backswing. The face is also going to be a little bit weaker. You know, he has a little bit of a strong grip, so the face is always going to be a little bit on the strong side. You know, one of the things he does really well to counteract the strong face is he has a lot of shaft lean and impact. So it's not going to go left in most cases just because of the club face. It's more of the shaft tipping and shutting the face, again, at such high speeds that he's probably going to pull it. Let me clean this up just so you guys can see a little bit better. So here's that position at kind of just past lead arm parallel, and you can just see the difference in like the shaft there. So as we're getting a little bit closer to that blue line, we're not going to see the shift, and you can see the head is still taller. You know, so that's kind of where we went and why. And so, you know, the takeaway, you know, for you is, again, I just am a big believer in like wherever the club is on the backswing, you know, your body and the shaft are going to respond to those things. And so, you know, if you really are trying to clean up your downswing, I would always encourage you to look at where the backswing is. You know, what's something you could do very simply. I mean, within 15 minutes, he was kind of owning this move. Granted, he's a very, very good athlete and a very good golfer, so it was fairly easy for him. But again, I'm putting him in an environment with sticks and the straw gate that is making it much, much easier for him to functionally move. If I just tell him these things, it's a little bit more difficult than if I say, okay, I want you to miss the stick but still swing between those. I mean, he obviously can't come too far inside. If I were to draw this stick in the same position, you can see here, like that's basically the same thing. You can see he would immediately run into it. So putting that stick in the way, you know, really just put into context for him, like, okay, this is how I should move. I didn't give him any cues about hinging differently. I basically just said miss the stick and then add some length. The only thing that was difficult for him in this move was really getting the club head mass at the top of the backswing more this way, more across the line, just because he, you know, tends to be a little bit flatter. It's more comfortable. But since we're trying to hit a little bit more of a draw, you know, that position with the wrist was quite difficult. So in summary, you know, what I would say is try to clean up the backswing if you're having some undesired things on the downswing. Again, though, you can definitely do things, you know, with sticks and balls to kind of change the downswing how you want. But when you have some time to work on the swing, I would definitely work on cleaning that up. And then what you should see is kind of everything domino or fall into place in the downswing, a little bit like happened with Charles. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please drop a comment if it was helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so.